to say probably a few words about what they do. I'm starting with Eli Sahawi from Google. Go ahead, Eli.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eli Sahawi. I am policy manager working on AI and emerging tech, particularly agentic AI and robotics.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. This is Mahesh. Thank you all, and thanks to Amir and Praveen for having us here. And also they are generous enough to put my younger version in the picture. And so I'm from Project Nanda. We are pioneering the building and foundational infrastructure for an internet of AI agents. You know, like it's a new kind of internet is born or getting born from last year onwards. And yeah, and one of the most foundational issues, the way I say it, that trust, that is me, you know, like that's my photo. The same thing, you know, like how we are going to solve this problem, you know, like using in this internet of AI agents, and those primitives need to be solved at a foundational layer. It's not like after the fact or after the thought solutioning. It has to happen as a first principle. Yeah, thank you.
Alpesh.
Hello, I'm Alpesh Shah. I am the managing director of the IEEE Standards Association and a member of the management council at IEEE. Thank you.
Thank you. And Apurva.
Hey guys, hi. My name is Apurv Goyal. I'm a principal at Insight Partners. I help lead a lot of our US-India investing efforts. Just as context, we're one of the leading global technology investment funds. We manage close to $90 billion in AUM, investing out of a $12.5 billion fund into leading global software companies around the world, including a bunch of companies based out of India.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As we get into, Praveen is my co-moderator. Praveen is the head of AI Lab, the caucus in the Bangalore. But before we start talking about a little bit that, as of raise of hand, how many of you have built an agent or played with an agent? How many of you are scared of what's going to happen with agents? Well, it's probably like 5%, 10%. So it thinks that 80 or 90% of you don't feel that agents are going to be dangerous or anything else. Have you followed what happened with Open Cloud recently on Notebook? Do you feel this is cool or exciting or energizing or fun? Who's excited about what happened? It's a beautiful experiment, right? So we're learning about all these things, and as we talk about agentic world, the concept of autonomy scares a lot of people. Why? Because we don't fully know how they're built. We don't fully know how they're going to react, if their objective going to be changing, if they're going to be mixing with each other and creating new babies. We don't know what's going to happen. And then in that world of autonomy, a lot of decisions that enterprises take and society's functioning may not be able to be put in the hands of agents. So the concept of governance, which is a concept which is very encompassing about how we control the outcome of systems and procedures and ownership and risk management, becomes central again in the world of agents, which was not the case about even a year ago. So today we're going to be talking about this concept of governing autonomy, how we can actually make sure that this world, this future world, we're going to be fully autonomous. Not only is our hand to some extent, but we can somehow trust it, and we don't know to what extent. So to get started, maybe we can quick demo. What do you think, Praveen?
Let's start off with the
questions.
what happening with autonomy, and then.
Okay, perfect. That's a good thing. So maybe I can start with Eli. Eli, in your vantage point, can you help us understand what's different between multi-agentic environment and systems and traditional AI that we've been used to? How should we think about it?
Yes. So with the raise of hand that I saw in this room, I think we are talking with a group of experts. So from my perspective, and many of you have already worked with Mosbug and have seen OpenClaw and have built agents. So you know better than me that the way that we think about agents, it's not a specific line or a specific point in time that like this group of things are agentic and this group of things are non-agentic. Rather thinking about them as a spectrum of agency or autonomy, going from basic chatbots that can do a little bit of research and at the end present the result. For example, Google Deep Research does a research given your prompt and finds the information and presents that information. That has some agentic features, but it doesn't take actions compared to, let's say, going all the way towards the end of the autonomy. That is, for example, autonomous cars that are completely end-to-end and they take action in the real world. So I think seeing agents as a spectrum or a continuum of autonomy across different dimensions, including memory, including planning and long-term planning, short-term planning, planning horizon that they can plan and execute things, and also autonomy itself. So what I'm trying to say is that we can't say, we don't want to say agents are the ones that take actions. We want to say agents live on a continuum from very basic autonomy all the way to things like autonomous vehicles that are fully end-to-end autonomous.
Mahesh, you started talking about interesting issues, but let's follow what Ellie said. One, how do we know agents could make an error? How can we even know?
Yeah, so she used a very nice word. It's a continuum, right? So it's not like a single point responses that you can keep monitoring, like after the agent took an action. And another thing that she mentioned, they become a network actors. They will be acting at every single stage, visibly or invisibly. And that makes it mandatory for us to make it, I would say that it has to be a runtime governance rather than, wait for, let it happen and then we'll reverse. So the traditional governance models that we have or exist were very much evolved from our understanding of machine-to-machine interaction, then it evolved into a SaaS model and a cloud model, then we evolved to the microservices architecture, and we kind of assumed that, somebody else is taking care of those governance after we reach at a scale, so when autonomy will reach at a scale, then we cannot think of okay, we need to solve this problem now. Now we are thinking of agent as okay, ChatGPT is one of the agents, I'm just looking for the search answers rather than, and slowly we're saying that, okay, it can just go and do some action, it can crawl some web pages. Okay, then we say that, okay, then there will be multi-agent systems, agent-to-agent interaction, collaboration that will happen, and just we are adopting it without addressing the foundational issue that the safety and the governance has to be addressed, that's one, that along with the trust, but also to make it how it can become a deployable across the enterprises or a public services or a civil society without sacrificing, which is very important factor, without sacrificing the openness of this execution and the accountability. So those are the 2 points I would like to mention. Yeah.
So you give us more information than I asked for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When we talk about incident that happens, of course we're going to remove bad actors, right? People that are using agents for bad purposes. We're not talking about that, which is a different issue, security, cybersecurity, control. We talk about agents themselves making an error or having a mistake. Some of you know that we're talking recently about agentic identity as a way to make sure that who are the agents, where they're coming from, what's their training, what data have been used, who created them, who they belong, do they have a passport, how they're going to talk, what language they speak, can we talk with each other at the same language, and so forth, which brings now the concept of certifying agents. And I'm going to ask to Alpesh the question, because Alpesh in the IEEE standards are working a lot on many concepts even ahead of its time on Agentic. How do you think about certifying agents in the world of autonomy? How should we think about it?
I think this works now. I guess that's one of the most important points, right? Knowing when it's on and when it's not. I say that in jest, but this is also part of when we're thinking about these various models and how they interact with each other. Not having the ability to understand what is the end result or what good looks like creates a difficulty in understanding the parameters by which you can state this is working as it should. Which means that very much, and already we've seen this done quite successfully in a number of the use cases we've been involved in prototypes and implementations around this that we've done, is that first, making sure you have a very strong governance structure in place is critical. Second is making sure that you have a very clear process by which you are determining what does and doesn't go out or is ready to go into the sandbox, or what you're ready to even put into that runtime state, as you were sharing earlier. It also requires ensuring that you have an iterative approach to it. These are not one-time exercises because you won't know necessarily when there might be a shift or where things may go in a different direction, right? And so this requires sort of a constant monitoring approach. Adding to this is also the need to contextualize a lot of what you're looking at. Some of the reasons why you may see the behaviors of the multi-agents may be because there was a trigger that you typically do not see or are unaware of, which means that the bounds that you currently had in mind may not be the right bounds. And therefore, it's important to also ensure that you have transparent, accountable, not only logging, but people in that process. Ultimately, at the end, what it is that you can evaluate, let's say, at a much more level of confidence, is the means by which it achieves the output. You won't know 100% if the thing that is out there is perfect. But over iterative series, you begin to clearly understand, right? This, out of whether it's a Monte Carlo simulation or whatever model you choose to apply here, at some point you have enough data to know what good should be, right? So our certified program allows for this. At the same time, we have a series of standards that Amir was instrumental in being involved, and a number of folks in the front row here as well, which are focused on data transparency, focused on age-appropriate design, focused on also the critical elements around what does it mean to be accountable, transparent. What does data privacy mean in the context of systems that we don't know what they were to be, right? And what we found the greatest power in is people. It was the community of people that worked on this. They were heavily representative of a mix of lawyers, doctors, artists were even involved, with engineers and technical people that really understood the contextual problem so well that it allowed for us to better understand and appreciate what some of those variances might have been.
Thank you, Alpesh. Apurva, you invest in many startups and companies, and you are in the first line to evaluate them and see if the company is going to have solid technical background and the teams is right. But because Alpesh mentioned the concept of governance, we're talking about governance and governing AI. How do you imagine a stack? Because we talk about the technical stack, we're all familiar with the technical stack, but what would be a governance stack look like when everything is autonomous?
Yep. I think the way we think about governance stack in this AI world is a 5K layer model. If I kind of go first is like the build time. Around the build time, the idea is, okay, how is the company architected around the idea of data governance, model versioning? When you kind of come to the next stack, which is basically deploy time, how do you think about the idea of policy, tracking, permissioning, secrets management? When we come to the third piece of it, we think about this whole idea of runtime. How are you ensuring that your architecture allows for real-time observability? How do you ensure that there is an idea of kill switch? If things go bad, how do you ensure that you are able to cut it off at the right point of time? Then we think about the whole idea of how do you drive remediation? So do you have the right audit trails to be able to do a post-mortem? Do you have the right incident response architecture to be able to attack that? And then how can you drive a whole accountability layer, which is around the whole idea of who drives accountability? How do you have the right reporting structures? How can you conduct right post-mortem? Do you have the right set of tools to be able to do a compliance mapping there? So I think we think of governance stack in today's world in a holistic 5K layer model, and anybody who thinks about this holistically is where we feel comfortable about the fact that, okay, this is the team that is truly thinking about governance in a holistic way. And as you think about the best AI native teams, governance is becoming less of a compliance issue, but more of like an issue which is more product and GTM, because whoever is embedding governance into product is truly winning on the GTM side, and that is becoming a competitive advantage, and so it's becoming a key part of how we evaluate a lot of the companies.
Some people jokingly said we, a few years ago, 10 years ago, we talked about Intel Insight when the PC era was that. Now we're talking about governance insight. Would you agree with that?
100%. I feel like with so much of uncertainty, I feel like every enterprise that is procuring today, like the upfront conversation before they take on any business through multiple layers of, evaluation is talking through a bunch of questions around what is your auditability, what's your traceability, what's your data handling practices, are there kill switches in place? Because the costs of things going wrong are so high that people are willing to spend millions of dollars in ensuring the right governance while even buying a $500,000 ACV contract. So I feel like it's becoming a core part of.
So how startup, sorry, this is a question I didn't plan to ask, but how startups that don't have all the fundings and all the resources necessary could comply with this level of scrutiny or requirement?
I think the way I think about it is when you're starting an agentic AI business in today's world, I call it like you need to have a minimal viable trust stack. You need to be at a high level, you need to be able to tell what is this agent supposed to do? Is it actually doing what it's supposed to do? And if not, can you actually have someone stop doing what it's supposed to do on a real-time basis? And that becomes critical. And for that, you basically need to have what you call as a clearly defined agent identity registry. You need to have the right set of guardrails at the orchestration layer. You need to have a clear real-time observability architecture. And lastly, you need to have very clear set of defined oversight. I think if you don't have any of this, I don't think you should be launching an agentic ecosystem into production, because you're bound to meet more failures than success. And it's not that expensive to do these 4 basic things. And of course, as you scale, you'll have a lot of compliance start building into your product. But this is the minimal viable thing that any startup that's looking to start in the agentic AI needs to do to be able to go into production.
I think you should write an article about that, because a lot of us would need that little 4-stack layer to get started. You use the term orchestration. I would like to pass on to Praveen as we talk about orchestration and coordination, because as we define multi-agent systems, they need to be coordinated in some ways to do certain things, but also to not do certain things. So Praveen, is you ready for a demo, quick demo? I think it's very tiny, so maybe you can explain.
Right. So we at Cognizant and Cognizant AI Lab truly believe that the next phase of AI is going to be multi-agent system. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. I thought these was working. So we at Cognizant and Cognizant AI Lab truly believe that the next frontier is going to be multi-agent systems. And in that endeavor, sometime in May 2025, we sort of open sourced our multi-agent framework, which is called Neuro AI Multi-Agent Accelerator, which you can see on the screen here. It's a low-code, no-code framework that's designed to accelerate the prototype development to scaling. It's a production-grade environment. Currently, it's available under Apache 2.0 license on GitHub. There's an active community that is sort of working on building and enhancing this framework as we speak. Some of the features and the capabilities of this accelerator is that it's LLM agnostic, right? It's cloud agnostic, so you as a user will have the control over which LLMs that you want sort of the agent network to talk to. You have a control on which environment that you want to deploy on that, and it's interoperable. I mean, currently, we support multiple protocols from an agent-to-agent communication, our own OSA protocol, as well as A2N MCP server. And most importantly, as we heard about the governance, autonomy, and the guardrails, security is built into it. So we built this from security at the core of it, not as an afterthought. So in the next 1 minute, and most importantly, we've made it so simple that even a seasoned an AI ML engineer to a CXO who has minimal or no coding experience can start building their agent network in a matter of minutes. And that's how. The whole reason is that we want to make this as a de facto standard, and we want everyone sort of adopt it and sort of, not just experiment it, actually build this agent networks at scale and deploy them, right? So let me just do a quick demonstration. And today, what I'm going to do is quickly wipe code an agent network in front of you guys. So this is our vibing environment. So let me just quickly, anybody wants to give me a prompt? Anybody? Anything you want prompted? Yeah.
AI Summit Schedule Manager.
All right.
Can you read, because it's not easy to read?
Yeah, I'm saying create a multi-agent.
Can you activate the microphone?
I'm saying create a multi-agent network. For India AI Summit New Delhi, right? It's working. Okay. So what you can really see is, just give it a few more seconds. What you will see is that there's a multi-agent architect and a designer which is working behind just to understand the intent. And the intent that I gave was just create a multi-agent network for India AI Summit New Delhi. That's currently happening. First thing that you will see is that the large language model understood my requirement and it created set of agents. It's defined the agents. Now what it's actually doing is that it's actually connecting those agents to an orchestrator. It's still building through it. And then as a next step, what will happen really is that basically, now every agent needs to be defined. It needs to have its own roles, responsibilities, and what it should do and what it should not do. So currently that's a step that we are actually going through it, where you can see that, in a matter of moment, all these individual agents will be populated with descriptors. You can see that, right? So those descriptions are nothing but its definitions, what it should be doing at the end of the day, right? And it's still finalizing the agent network. The two things that you need to see at this here is that there are agents which have been specifically created for that agent network, and then there are a few of them which are under the leaf nodes, orange in color. So basically what the designers understood that there are certain agents which are already created and they were available in my environment, so it just connected them directly. So instead of rebuilding them, reinvesting in creating the agent network, it just connected them so you could use it. So what it also allows as a designer of the agent network is that you have the control, auditability and traceability of it. At any point you think that that leaf node is not required in that agent, you can just delete it and save it. The server understands the changes and your new agent network is ready to be played around with. So now that the agent network is ready, what I'm really going to do is that launch it. You can see that the agent network is made available. Again, just let me blow it up a little bit here. And before I sort of fire a query, just to sort of, and again, this is a development environment. The reason we are showing a development environment is just to showcase a couple of capabilities. What you see on the right-hand side panel is basically your chat window, and then you have an internal chat, which is basically shows in real time the communication between the agents, what kind of information is being transmitted, what the nature of it's on. So you as a designer have the control over it as well. So you can take a dump of it later on and you can sort of go through it, review it to see if any confidential data is being leaked through or large language model got access to it, right? And then you have the logs. The logs are pretty granular in nature, in the sense that it gives you details to the level of the token usage and the cost associated with each of that communication. And last but not the least, I mean, most of the folks here are pro ESG metrics, right? So you also get a score of energy usage, carbon footprint, and the cost associated with each of the prompt that you are firing. So let me just So I'm asking the agent network, so can you provide a schedule for the keynote speeches at the India AI Summit, right? So I think it's, okay, let me see if I can get, so currently it's not grounded, it's just talking to a large language model behind. So every agent network that we create here, by default it talks to GPT-4, but you as a user have a control, as I said, is LLM agnostic. So if you in your organization have a qualified large language model that you want this agent network to, we can. So globally, each and every agent network has access to one large language model, but the framework has the coolest capability where every leaf node agent also can be empowered with two specialized or a general purpose agents, LLMs as well. So they act as a fallback, and if you have a specialized agent like for auditing or governance or compliance, right, you want higher accuracy, you can sort of connect a specific large language model just to that leaf node agent as well. So that's sort of the, and today it's available on GitHub. It's been there for the last 5 months now. We have an active community. The GitHub repository gives you access to the code base under the Apache 2.0 license, and this framework has met the highest standard of GitHub security as well today. Right.
So that's an example of a, you have more queries to run? Yep. So that's an example of a coordination which basically takes into account all the consideration that was discussed. And you said there's open source, right, Praveen?
Yes, it's open source.
It's open source, so everybody can use and play with it.
So here's the QR code. And if you need more, so here's a QR code that you can sort of scan. It will directly take you to the GitHub repository that we have. We encourage you to fork it, clone it, and if you like it, give us a star. And if you don't like it, let us know why. And we are here to sort of work with you on that. Yeah.
Sorry to interject. I just had a question. If you have multiple agents running at the same time, all of them have different contexts and different memories. How do you manage that in a single platform?
I mean,
Good
just some
question.
time, let's come back to it offline, but we'll get into that. We'll get into it. Right.
Great question. So that was just a demo to basically, because the audience is diverse, to show what these things look like, but this has been certified ISO 42001 and complied with this framework as well. So there's a lot of behind the scene, what Apurva was talking about has been taken into account in terms of observability, real-time monitoring, and so forth. Going back to the issues of incident and tracking incident and danger that could happen, there are examples in other areas such as aviation and nuclear power, etc. Maybe Eli can give us a view of how the other industries have dealt with these issues, because these issues today we talk about agentic autonomy. We have these issues before in other sectors. How have we dealt with them?
Absolutely. So the technology may be new, but the concept of safety, especially in safety critical industries, is not new. We have seen that before and we've solved for it. Let's take the example of aviations and drones, for example. So drones are kind of newer technology, and a lot of regulatory bodies are looking at regulating drones. And the interesting thing about looking at drones and comparing them with agents is that when you look at, let's say, the regulations that, at least in the US, aviation industry is considering for drones, it was originally based on what FAA or Federal Aviation Administration calls VLOS, meaning visual line of sight, meaning that a pilot has always is in command and they have to keep visual line of sight with the drone. So, and that is how they are accountable for managing that drone. However, as the safety and as the system safety based on using AI technology develops, now the VLOS regulation is moving to beyond visual line of sight. And that means that now the safety of an AI detect and avoid system has gone above what a human can do. And based on this advantage of, detect and avoid based on AI system, now the regulation is moving from a pilot has to always keep visual line of sight to beyond visual line of sight, and using that as a way to maintain safety. So drawing a comparison to agents, if you think of, when we talk about human in the loop, we are basically talking about VLOS. The human has to keep approving every step of the way that agents are taking. However, that kind of undermines the utility of the agent. Right? So as agents become safer and more reliable, similar to what detect and avoid in the aviation industry, got better and better over time, we have to be moving from human in the loop to pilot in command in aviation industry. In this case, will be human in command. So human will be doing the supervision, but not in the loop, approving everything that agent is supposed to do. So drawing this kind of parallels with respect to other industries that are moving from safety of human making those decisions make a lot of sense to apply to agentic AI, because similar to aviation, in this case we see that human, maybe keeping the human always in the loop is not the best thing. Similar to detect and avoid, there could be better safety systems that AI can provide that keeps agents even safer. But I'm not saying that that applies today. I'm saying similar to other industries that moved from one side to the other, agentic AI would also move. Now we are in human in the loop, and then we have to move towards human in command.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As you talked about the similarity between drones and agents and FAA as a regulation, I'm going back to the rest of the audience, the two of you, to ask a question. Is that, in your opinion, what's the balance between engineering guidelines and technical design at the core versus regulations and norms and standards, right? Because both of them are needed. We're not discussing that. But today, with what's going on with agents, in your opinion, what's the balance of that? Should be 80% engineer design and good practices, like observability, measurement, etc., or should be probably a little bit less controlled and engineering, let innovation go, but also provide a framework of certification and standards? How do you balance these two?
Yeah. So I'm having an analogy with the early days of internet, like how internet even evolved at first place. They make sure that it's not owned by individual player or anything, so it was all inclusive, and they're very much focused on solving the foundational primitives, like identity, discovery, trust, and that was in a federated system. It was never a centralized system. So in this context, like when you said, okay, so compliance, it should be heavy compliance will kind of sabotage the innovation, like how the trade-off we will do. And my opinion on that is, like we should be keep the innovation open, and that remains as a data plane, okay? But the governance has to be the control plane. So they has to build in parallel. We cannot choose one versus other. So yeah, that's my thought. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear Apesh's and Apurva's opinion on that as well.
Yeah, I think Amir, if we took some real-world examples, right, there's some policies regionally that some have claimed were too early in the days and have led to unnecessary regulation. And the effects of that unnecessary regulation have compromised perhaps the innovation that could have emerged as a result. I'm not so sure whether or not I agree with that. I think, I'll let time, claim that one. But what I would say is that it really just depends what you're trying to do. If you're in early days, you're just trying to understand what is possible and the bounds within your own sandbox. You should be able to test it out and understand. You need the chance to even observe it before you can jump to the conclusion that it's something that's ready to go to market. At the same time, when you get to the proper maturation point, as my colleagues have shared, this is when regulation starts to make a little bit more sense, right? From a requirements standpoint. Policy can also function, though, in an earlier stage to begin framing. And the framing is important to know just so you have a sense of where is too far, right? But framing is different than regulation. And at a certain point, I'm sure Purva knows as well, is that there comes a point where there's a market acceptance of what is normalized. And at that point in time, that's when the market differentiation really starts to play a role. That's when you see the major uptick. Prior to that, you're not necessarily going to see everyone buy into paying $100,000 or $150,000 to get something certified, right? The costs become a barrier to entry. But this also means that there is perhaps a different way of approaching this. You know, I go back to the comment Amir and were speaking to earlier of the mini trust stack. You know, in many ways, we can also consider this the economic problem of how do you make it easier for startups to come into play. And one of those ways could be, let's say theoretically, but maybe some of us are working on this, is the integration of the required standards and policies baked into the fabric from the get-go. And then as you build and stage gate beyond that, what you've already done is you've bought time for those startups. You've also given a level of trust for the governments as they're playing here. And you've given regulators at least something much clearer to measure against. It's very, very difficult to ask someone to measure something and hold you accountable when they don't know what they're supposed to hold you accountable against. And it's the same problem for companies. They don't want to waste time on something that makes no sense in all this market play. So, Amir, I hope that helps answer your question, but that's my take on it.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please go ahead. And who wants to answer
Yes,
too?
Apurva, actually. In your experience...
I think Alpesh captured most of what I said, so I would save the time.
Actually, I wanted to get your perspective on how do you see founders actually balancing this?
I feel like the idea is everybody's working with the certain idea of what that framework looks like. And I feel like there is not a lot of mutual tension between deploying responsibly AI and what leads to high commercial deployment. You know, it's like if you need to be a $500 million ARR business today, you need to be able to sell into enterprises in mid-market. And those mid-market solutions are selling into either government institutions, large-scale enterprises, and all of them today have a much larger business to protect. And so if you're experimenting with a new technology that is evolving very, very fast, and if you're not able to provide for certain frameworks of those responsible guidelines, it's like, hey, I want to make sure my data is being handled well. I want to make sure my secrets are being managed in the right way. The agents have the right set of permissions and policies. Those guidelines are being, and I think today those frameworks are very individual, are localized to the company that you're trying to serve. But if you kind of distill that, those will broadly come down to like 15, 20 large principles. And most of the innovation that is happening within the bound of those 20, 25 frameworks. I think to Alpesh's point, that is going to start solidifying a lot more as the technology matures. But I think people always try and frame being responsible and commercial innovation as a trade-off. I feel like with the way the world is moving, it's not a tension, it's actually very, very aligned. And that's how even most of the board conversations happen, is because if you can't do that, you would not be able to scale.
So on that note, staying with you, Apurva, right? You talked about the trade-offs. You talked about the investment, right? If we switch gears into the economics of it, right? So when do you see the governance actually becoming a competitive advantage and not a cost burden to the organization?
To be very honest, in very early stages of the company, we have a lot of our portfolio companies at seed Series A stage start selling into enterprises day one. So if you are selling into the Cognizants of the world, or if you're selling into the Googles of the world and all of that, and a bunch of these companies today, and just how innovative they are and how fast they're moving, like day one they sell into, you know, a $500,000, $1 million ARR contract into a very large enterprise. And when you're doing that, you can't do that without governance. Like SOC 2 used to be that version, SOC 2 compliance for like your old age SaaS framework there. So I feel like most of these conversations become pretty much very, very embedded in your seed series A. Like the moment the company is about to sell, if governance is not an embedded conversation in your product, it will not be a competitive edge for you in the GTM. And to be honest, I meet 100 AI companies a month. The best AI native teams today have actually embedded it so deeply that, like security, it's part of their weekly operating cadence. They'll talk about the idea around evals. How solid are your eval reviews? Are you doing it on a weekly basis? Are you making sure that like meeting the standards that you want to espouse serving into an enterprise customer? They're thinking about red teaming in a very solid way. They're doing very high quality post-mortem reviews if things don't work the way they are supposed to work. So I feel like governance is like security today, and those start playing out pretty much in a seed series A conversation. If you're selling into an enterprise, I feel like that conversation becomes later if you're a PLG-led business that is serving like individual creators, individual designers. I don't think if you're like trying to buy a $50 per month contract as a designer and using that to create videos, you're thinking as much about like, hey, is this meeting those governance standards that I need to? But anyone selling into a mid-market enterprise solution, this becomes a very early on conversation.
I have just a follow-up thought on that, right? So our India's digital infrastructure story, like when we built Aadhaar, we built UPI payment system, we solved the identity problem, we solved the payment problem, then we were like, okay, what about the data privacy? Then we have the DigiLocker, then we have OCDNs. Then now what is happening, that's a very important success story and very much aligned with this agentic AI, because the government took a stand saying that, hey, we are going to standardize the interfaces, okay? And what we really want to do, rest of the people or the companies, they can do any applications that they want on top of it. So that government plays a very important role in this agentic AI evolution, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. At the beginning, we talked about governing autonomy, and we discussed about autonomy, we discussed about governance to some extent, I think. What would be, in your opinion, well, there's two aspects to that question. One is it, if we count about trust, what is infrastructure for trust? Because it's so fragmented between different pieces. And then how should we think about the one single thing that would enable us to go to the right direction? Because we talked about, again, many things, but in your opinion, what would be the one single thing that we have to do today, given what you expect, what you mentioned, it's just that we need to leave innovation open, we need to experiment, we need to have some general guidelines and framing, of course. But besides that, what would be one little thing that we need to really be pushing collectively, not as individuals, but collectively to make everybody progress, besides open sourcing it, of course?
Ellie, do you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. Maybe one of the things that we can think about today is how can we evolve testing methods and evaluation benchmarks for multi-agent systems. And the reason I say that is that we have a paper called distributional AGI safety, meaning that the paper discusses the fact that AGI may not emerge as one monolithic, big, powerful system, but it may actually emerge as a lot of sub-AGI agents, specialized agents, working with each other in a multi-agent system. So we may be talking about multi-agent systems that reach AGI level capabilities. And for that to be successful, what should we be thinking about today when it arrives? So in that paper, we discussed like 4 different categories of safety, including market design, including baseline safety for each agent itself, including inter-agent communication, et cetera, et cetera. Please feel free to refer to that refer to that paper. But I think what we need to do today is making sure that we build evaluation benchmarks that are relevant to multi-agent systems. And for frontier labs that are developing these models that are core to the agents, it's important for them to, and by them I mean Google DeepMind being one of them, to report, test against these benchmarks, report transparently about the limitations, report transparently about the capabilities, and I think that's that is one of the goals that Google DeepMind has been pursuing, and a lot of that information is available on the website. Please feel free to read our frameworks on AGI safety as well. So I stop there.
So I just, again, follow up on that, right? One of the important factors that we're missing in a multi-agentic system, we are assuming that it's a single model agent, right? Across the multi-agent system, I'm using one LLM model. But when we extend that thought, that what will happen when I'm using models provided by different players, open source, or non-open source, like all of those models will try to, so single model responses are easy to verify. We can have the metrics or all the telemetry associated with it to verify the whatever the agent is claiming. But when it goes across those boundaries, and it becomes like a multimodal system, multi-agentic system, and every single company saying that, hey, trust us, because we are, so one of the thought experiments or the way we try to solve it is like, get every voice heard, meaning that let's hear from all the academia how they think about this problem, get all the LLM or the big product companies get involved in this discussion. The same thing with the system integrators and hyperscalers also participate in it. And not just them, but including the policymakers as well as the younger generation who is gonna be the agentic AI native, so how are we preparing for that? That's very important. So the problem doesn't get solved with the single model responses. So the only solution that we kind of lean towards to make it enough decentralized or enough federated system so that we can have those trust primitives across every single thing. Yeah, thank you.
I think for me, largely the thing which I think can solve a lot of it, because that kind of distills enough information to people start working from, is the idea around auditability and traceability, to be able to capture and accurate reporting in an immutable way of a lot of what is happening. And as long as there are more open source platforms that allow for a lot of those, anonymized way of auditability and traceability in the incidents that's coming to come up, I think it drives for more collective learning at a more global platform level. I don't know if there are, and this is a conversation where when we meet a lot of startups, they're actually learning a lot from talking to each other, and they keep ruing about the fact that there are not a lot of global platforms that just talk about just learnings around auditable trails of what is happening, how is it happening, where do systems fail, at what scale and level of infrastructure. And I think something that solves for just a collective platform to learn from will go a long way. It's a very innovative environment around the world and what's happening. So as long as you provide the right infrastructure for even knowing what's going wrong, I think there's a lot that can actually accelerate the learning and development there.
That's a cue for our session. Alpesh, closing remark.
Oh, I thought that was what you programmed the agentic AI to do. Yeah, so I think there's two key points I'd like to just leave everyone with. The first, Amir runs a very innovative organization called AI Commons that many of us have been a part of over the years. And really the critical nature of what they have been looking at, which very much aligned with a lot of what we were looking at as well, was the idea of having these technologies treated as a commons, a public utility. Because if you don't do that, you can't do exactly what everyone here is speaking to. Only those that have access to that can do that. And the point on education is very critical, but the point I would just bleed into this then is the thing to do today, we have to spend a lot more time getting rid of the jargon. Even the title of today's session isn't something that's accessible readily to the same people we're asking to make use of these technologies, right? And so a lot of the effort needs to be spent on demystifying what we're talking about and show the value of it, because if we don't do that, then you're going to have a lot of fear. And a lot of the fear is unnecessary. And I think these would be the critical things. I would also love to use your app to turn off that alarm. So maybe you can teach us later about that. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. It's all